from training.tv. My name is Margaret. I'll be your broadcast engineer for today. We're here to talk about the wonderful and amazing FileMaker platform, and I am here with the equally wonderful and amazing HOnza Koudelka. HOnza has shown up on the stream many times before. His most recent series is a really awesome set of interviews, which I still think that you should go watch the videos for if you haven't seen. They cover some really interesting, obscure topics in the FileMaker platform. Hans is particularly known for his, frankly, mastery of performance in the FileMaker platform and giving all that information to us about how FileMaker works in terms of speed and performance. Today we have a BenchTest 2.1 update, which will be really awesome. Hans is also here with Angeline, who he will introduce shortly, but she has apparently been awesome enough to submit 60 bench test reports, which has helped with the new data set enormously. I think we're probably good. Okay, Hans, I know you got a lot to cover, so I'm kind of excited to hand it over to you. What are we doing today and what's happening?
Okay, great. Thanks for the nice introduction as always. Just for people who don't know me much yet, I'm from 2 4U. I work with FileMaker for 34 years as a developer. And besides performance, me and my company is also known for hardware integrations, integrating FileMaker with different hardware devices, and also bringing FileMaker apps to the App Store. And what we do the most is if someone has an app made in FileMaker and that's growing beyond what you can take care of yourself, we can help you to take care of it, expand it, optimize it, and keep it running in the long term. But today I'm going to talk about bench test, and with me is also a special guest, Angelina, who last 2 months has been the most active contributor using bench test and submitting test results to our website. So let me tell you, I'll share my screen. Let me tell you what bench test actually is. So bench test is something that you can find on our website, 24usoftware.com/benchtest. And it's a tool that I created many years ago, originally to let developers compare different ways how to do the same thing in terms of performance. So as an example, when I switch to FileMaker and show you, here's a 14 tabs with different kinds of tests, and this is a good example. Like if you have a question, what is the fastest way how to calculate the total of a set of numbers over a relationship? So there are 8 different tests here, and you can just run them and see what actually takes the least amount of time. And it's completely open. So once you unlock full access, you can just go there and see the scripts. The way it's designed is that for every test, there is a script called wrapper, which prepares the environment for the test, and then another script which actually runs the test. And the wrapper measures how long it takes for the inner script to run and collect. If you it can either display it in a dialog or collect it in a log if you automate multiple tests at a time. So that's what was the original purpose of this tool, with this nice slogan that my good friend Dean suggested when we talked over lunch and came to the conclusion, well, how do you know what's faster until you really know? You can only guess it until you measure it and compare the real collected values. So that was the beginning of this test. Then a new versions of FileMaker started coming, and people were asking, okay, is this new version faster or is it slower? So I started automating these tests. So there is an auto tab where you can configure what tests to run, how many times, on how many records, and it collects all the results in a separate table, and you can display the results here, even compare them in a chart like this to see what's faster, what's slower, and so on. So that's the basics of this. Then I think it was 3 years ago, my colleague got an idea. Well, it's great that you are running so many tests, and at that moment I was collecting a data set of maybe 20,000 individual tests and comparing them but it would be cool to have ability to compare results collected by other people as well. And that's why we came up with this website where you can download your own copy of BenchTest. I have prepared a standard set of tests which you can choose here. So you can just go to Auto and select one of the standard tests here predefined. Each of them consists of 111 individual tests. Then you run that test, and when it finishes, you can submit the results to our website. It automatically downloads the reference results collected on an old Mac Pro, and then it calculates the score, which basically tells you how much faster, how many times faster your configuration, your setup is compared to that reference test result that I collected on the Mac Pro. So this started a few years ago, uh, and almost maybe one minute after you submit the test, it should appear on our website. So when you click this results button, uh, it scrolls down to this table where it shows the actual test results submitted by the community, divided to 6 different groups because obviously it's not meaningful to compare how fast it is FileMaker when opening a database locally from the hard drive and compare it to, for instance, using the same database over internet. So we group them by these different setups. So local file is locally open from the hard drive. Localhost means connecting to FileMaker server running on the same machine. Local network means you are opening the database from a FileMaker server on the same local network. Wide area network, which can be either real or simulated. Basically, we differentiate between wide and local network based on the latency. So latency is how long it takes for data to reach the remote destination and come back to the client. And finally, we also have some tests from running multiple users concurrently and running against one of the available hosting providers, which we were lucky to get test servers set up last year and test their performance from different locations. So here you can see all the results, but over those 3 years, I'm happy to say that by now we have collected over 900 test results contributed by the community. And so right now we are working on a way how to improve the display on the website because even if we divide it to 6 groups, you can imagine that by adding by the sets of 10, it will take you a lot of to show all the
It'll
900
take a while
results,
to get through the 900 results. Yes.
and also to get some sense of what makes sense to compare because maybe you want to compare which computer is faster, or you want to compare which hosting provider is faster, or you want to compare the impact of hard drive speed, or you want to compare the impact of cache settings, whatever. So what we are going to come up with in the near future is more comprehensive filtering where you will be able to set the values that you are interested in. And for instance, only show values where the CPU speed is about similar to your computer and compare the speed based on different factors. So this is about the results that are available online. And now let me finally talk about BenchTest and the new version. So that we released just a few days ago, it's version 2.1, and there are some new features in that. Some are just small improvements, but there is one quite important new thing. So here we have a new filter. So when you start testing more, uh, and do run different sets of tests, you can just filter all those results by the kind of test that you run. So it you compare the results that are meaningful to compare. The other thing here is when you run a non-standard test, which is not the one that is submitted to the website, but you can do one, you can configure your own here. So when you go, and this is an example which I run last year when Claris introduced the different loop options for flushing the loop results. So I was comparing those here, and when the test is not a standard test, the new feature here is that you can manually select which of those results that you collect is considered the reference, and then all the other results are compared to it. And so when, for instance, it shows here that there is 2.8, that means that this one is 2.8 times faster than the reference one. Uh, you can also compare them in a chart. And if you want to make the chart meaningful to share, you can also customize each data set label so that you can then take a screenshot or export it and use it in an article or a slideshow, whatever makes sense for you. It's important that all these tests are showing the speed, not the time. So wider bar means faster operation.
Well, this is
Uh,
awesome.
so these are the basics of bench test and some of the new cool stuff. Uh, but the most significant one is here. Uh, Initiative 24 is something that we introduced a year ago in January 2024, and it's our attempt to make the FileMaker calculation engine significantly faster. Obviously, we cannot do it ourselves. We have to convince Claris to put some effort into it and make it a priority. So I wrote the article that's available here based by clicking this button here. That's where we kicked off the initiative. You can read all the details here, all the reasoning why I think it makes sense to make the calculation engine faster. And here is a good example because calculations are used everywhere in FileMaker. And with every new major version release, there is a new place where calculations can be used. So right now, I cannot imagine a FileMaker solution without calculations. And and in one of the previous live streams, I was also showing how easily you can completely kill the performance of your FileMaker solution by something that initially seems completely negligible, but just like the popular saying says, you can easily cook a frog by starting from a cold water. The same can happen with to performance of your FileMaker solution if you keep adding negligible calculations, but they add up over time, and
Yes.
at some point the solution starts being so slow that people complain about it.
Yeah, your video on that was really fantastic. I have linked it again across all the chats. Richard routinely references that presentation you did. Like he brings that up like once a month at least in a discussion because it was so impactful in understanding how like
Great.
omnipresent calculations are.
So I have a little bit of news. This is suggestion or idea that I submitted when Claris was accepting new ideas in the Claris community, and still vote for it. The my idea is that if enough people support me by by voting for this idea, to push it to become the number one on the list. Right now, I think we are on the number 6 in the list of ideas. Then it will be a strong enough argument for Claris to give it some priority or attention. And in that article, I also explain why I think it's possible to make it so much faster. A good example here is here in this chart. Basically, I try to do the same, avoid the same calculation, just written in different languages in PHP, Python, JavaScript. And I measured how quickly the exact same calculation can be calculated. So there is space for improvement. It's just a matter of finding the way and actually having that goal to do that. And one extra benefit of this approach of making calculations faster, because many people will argue, well, we don't care about calculations, so we want the FileMaker server to be faster, or we want more concurrent users, we want more CPU cores to be used, we want multi-threading, or we want let's say, faster deletion of records. Whatever argument comes, I always say, okay, but many of the things that Claris made faster over the last 5 years uh, only affected a small amount of users or small percentage of FileMaker users. If they made the calculation engine fast, every single user is going to feel that, and it will involve zero code modification. So just by upgrading to the new version of FileMaker, it has a faster calculation engine. The solution is going to run faster. And I believe that's definitely worth trying that. And another thing is, right now, this is the current progress. Uh, we take this data live from the Claris community sites. This is the idea in the Claris community. Where it shows the current number of points. Uh, you may not know that every vote is worth 10 points, so every person voting will add 10 points to this total. And just one caveat is you have to be logged into the Claris community, so only every person can vote only one. But you can ask as many friends as you want to join the Claris community and vote for it, definitely. And one thing that made me hope that we can achieve this and we can succeed convincing Claris to put some effort into this is that the last year at conference, uh, Douglas Wallace actually mentioned that if we reach about 80%, he didn't mention specific number, but he was showing on our chart, then he will support it in Paris as well. So, it does make sense to help with the voting because that will show Claris without doubt that you do care and that you believe that calculation engine faster is going to help you and everyone. And by the way, another thing to mention, Christian Schmidt, in response to this initiative, even there is a link somewhere here, even it's published here, uh, specific ideas, how he thinks it could be possible to make the calculation engine faster without breaking anything. So just by going through these ideas and applying them can significantly help. And we both, me and Christian and several people as well, even offered our help. So if Claris wants us to help them with this, we are ready to participate because we believe it makes sense. But let me get back to BenchTest. And before I show you the brand new feature that references the Initiative 24, let me give some space to my special guest, Angeline. Uh, and again, I have to repeat, Angeline has submitted over 60 bench test results, which is almost, I think it's like 6 or 7% of all results published on our website. So, Angeline, what was your experience with benches? And What did it help you with, and how do you feel about using it, and what did you discover with it?
Thank you, Hansa, first of all, to for inviting me, and thank you for this opportunity. Hello, everyone. I'm Angeline John, and I'm working as a senior software developer, primarily customizing or creating custom FileMaker solutions to, maintain health records or ticket management system, etc. I've been extensively using the 24U bench test to find the fastest machine to host the FileMaker server. That's why you see all of my contributions, Hansa. A lot of them just wanted to be thorough, and I did it with various different configurations by changing the processor configurations versus the RAM versus the IOPS. So you would find, the description would say, what exactly I've used. Also, by increasing and decreasing the FileMaker server cache size, even that played an important role in my discovery. And this has been illuminating. So the software, the 24U bench test, helped me create a baseline of the current setup that we have, and it also helped me identify what makes the actual difference, right? Whether it's a processor or the IOPS, and how each one plays a role into the performance, and using which I was also able to optimize one of the mission critical processes that I have on my backend, which I reduce the performance time, by a lot of seconds, like improving. Just to cut the story short, I improved the performance by 50%. So 24U bench test really helped me with that. It's been great. I tested with both the previous version 2.0 and the latest version 2.1, and I have some discrepancies I discovered, Hansa, that we can discuss. It will be good to see, what's under the hood, what went under the hood in the latest one, and what those discrepancies are.
Yeah, nice to hear that you have been so successful. Just for people who did notice the recent update, there was one bug in showing the score locally in the bench test, which did not affect the website. So on the website, the score was showing correctly. I fixed that bug earlier today, so a fixed version 2.1 V2 is already available for download. Just not from the website, but if you download the version 2.1 and run it, it will offer you to download the newer version, and you can just replace it. A good thing to mention is I always wanted to do with performance testing something that is as close as possible to real world situations, because every time we see some laboratory kind of test and the results, it's very difficult to get the same results applied to our day-to-day environment, because all those laboratory tests are focused typically on some single feature or a small subset of features, but not on how typically users actually use FileMaker. So I'm not saying I achieved that perfectly, but I tried hard to define the standard test in the bench test uh, of those 111 individual tests in a way that it as closely as possible matches what we really use in our solutions. And I also applied some weights to individual test results. So, for instance, if there's something tested that's not being used very often, it has a smaller weight, so it doesn't affect the total score so much as things that we use on a daily basis. And another note is what's very difficult to test is things that are affected, for instance, by caching. So if you run like series of find requests on the same table, only the first fine is affected by the network and FileMaker speed because everything beyond that typically leverages the cache. But the truth is, it's how the real solutions work. We do have the cache, and we leverage the cache. So even in the real world, only the first find request is slower than the other one. So I hope that the one of the values of BenchTest is really, getting close to the real situation with the results. But Angeline, one thing I recall is when you first tried BenchTest, you struggled a little and you didn't understand why the test runs so slow. Do I recall that correctly?
Yeah, it was on a new server. I believe it was on a Linux server.
Mm-hmm.
I had been running it only on Windows Server previously, and then we are trying to move to the new Linux-based server, and it was running over the WAN connection. So that was the query that I had. But it's been helpful to see, which is performing well over the WAN. What processor or what IOPS play an important role, or network. Some instances are network optimized, right? All these machines, they are AWS EC2 instances. So some of them are optimized for network and they have higher bandwidth allocated to the EBA storage. How that performs versus some other low level, I would say, or a machine with lesser resources, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it was good. Once you explained it, I mean, it's been working as expected.
Very nice. Here on the screen, people can see that these all test results are actually those submitted by Angeline, the AJ. So you can see there's a really matter. And some of them, the difference between the poor ones and the good ones is really significant. Like this top score is over 10, and scoring only 2 or even less. So seems you really found some significant impact factors. Uh, was there any surprise that you found during your testing that might
Yes,
be occurring?
yeah. I was surprised. So the highest scores of anything above 8, those I got with using your latest version of 24U Bench Test 2.1. All the other scores just between I think the least was 0.8, if I'm not wrong. So anything from there until 2.5, 2.7, they've been measured using the previous version of Bench Test 2.0. That was so the scoring system actually surprised me in the new version. So one of my question was going to be, has something changed? Have the metrics changed on how they get scored under the hood? Because there's a vast difference, from 2.5 until to 8 or 10, basically.
Okay. Well, so just for everyone, the testing methodology has not changed at all. The tests remain the same. The calculations remain the same. And the only issue that I found was really uh, what the calculation showing directly here in the results. So and you could easily notice the bug by seeing that the score for the standard for the reference results was showing I think something like 2.5 instead of 1. So because this is the reference that we compare everything to, should always show the score of exactly 1. So based on your testing, do you have any advice for people what in terms of the AWS instance configuration has been the biggest has had the biggest impact on your tests?
Yes, certainly the AMD processor, they perform really well as opposed to the Intel processor at the same speed. Intel really shows a higher score only if if the core speed, if the individual core speed is more than 4 gigahertz. Otherwise, the bench test scores are just low for the Intel. It just doesn't get pushed beyond 2. Also, the IOPS make a difference, wherein like if a machine with the, let's say, a 3000 IOP versus 50K IOP, it'll go, the 3000 IOP would get a score of 1.5, and to push it to beyond like 2 or 2.5, just increase the IOP to 50K. And if we have to use the provisioned IO2 IOPS, those are the ones that actually make the difference, as opposed to the general purpose type of IOP there. That's one thing. Then the others would be increasing the cache size on the FileMaker server side. I tested with the default 512 MB versus 4 gigs versus I went all the way up to the database file size that I had 25 gigs. So it's you, after a point, you don't actually see much of a difference. Like if you go beyond, let's say, an 8 gig or a 12 gig cache size, you don't see much of a performance difference. It's almost like the delta is really low. But it's helpful to have, like going up to like certainly helpful to have higher cache size on the server side, as opposed to having the default one. These are the main things that I noticed in my testing.
Okay, well, thanks for sharing your insights. I would probably here remind people on some of the general advice that's available on many different sites and blogs. Many articles about specifically server configuration are written by Wim Decourt. I really highly recommend any article by Wim in terms of performance. When speaking about cache size, that's highly dependent on obviously the solution that you host. If you have a small solution, you can pretty much use the default cache size. When the cache size has impact is when you have a large solution with a big schema, because caching the schema is the most impactful thing on the performance. And when typically I'm thinking about factors that impact speed of FileMaker. As far as I think version 21 goes, it's still number one factor is the latency. So time, how long it takes for a data packet to reach the server and come back. So this is what we measure the network here. And the lower it is, the better. Local network latency larger than just 2 or 3 milliseconds is really going to have a huge impact when you get to latency under 30 milliseconds. You can consider yourself very lucky. But the lower you get, the better. The second factor typically is the CPU performance, and not the number of cores, but the performance of a single core. So if you get a server with more than 8 cores, you'll probably not utilize those extra cores at all. So it's better to have 8 very performant cores than to have 20 slower ones. And the third huge factor is memory. I just talked to a customer where he experienced, based on that for WebDirect users, it's good to account for 1 gigabyte per user. And for FileMaker Pro clients, typically at least 100 or 200 megabytes megabytes per user. So it's good to have enough memory to take care of all your connections, all your scripts, everything. And only then the next factor is the disk speed, unless it's very slow. But if it has reasonable speed, memory has the size of the memory until it's like very huge has bigger impact the hard drive speed. But at some point, hard drive speed becomes the next factor. So if you get a latency, very fast processor, enough RAM, and quick enough drive, then you did the maximum in terms of server configuration to make FileMaker fast. And then the next thing that has even bigger impact, all the factors that I mentioned, is how you design your solution. And that's where FMBench and BenchTest can help you. We can help with that if you turn to us. And that's also where the calculation engine speed plays a role. So let me go back to BenchTest 2.1. And maybe before I finally get to the Initiative 24 feature, are there any questions from the audience, Margaret?
Not that I can see at the moment. People just mostly seem to be interested or fascinated by the information, or they didn't know. I had a couple people ask for the links so they could go vote for the calculation improvements. So I went and
Okay.
gave them that.
So this is the biggest new feature in the new version, and there's this last tab called Initiative 24, where it actually has two slides. On the first slide, I introduced the Initiative 24. You can go to the article. You can see live status of how many votes we have got for the idea. The target is actually the current idea number one. So if someone votes, it's a moving target. So if someone votes for the idea number one, then obviously the target gets farther, and we need more votes to collect for ours. But uh, there is still like we can achieve the goal right now with just 303 people voting. So I know that most of the people attending today have already voted, maybe all of them. But if you have friends, ask them to help us, and we will get even more. This is the direct link to vote, and this is the most important button because that takes you to the next slide. And there is a new portal where we can actually test the speed of calculations. And the first two, which you cannot delete, those are the exact calculations that I published on the Initiative 24 website. So here is the reference calculation. There is one for, sorry, here. There is one part for math calculations and one part for processing strings. And this is the exact calculation that I ported to PHP, Python, and JavaScript to compare the performance. So now you can test it on your own computer with different versions of FileMaker and see how they compare. When you run the test, it's designed to run for 30 seconds. So unlike the other tests in BenchTest, which basically has a constant set of tests, and depending on how fast configuration you have, the test will take longer or shorter time to run. Here I took a completely opposite approach. The calculation itself is executed in a loop. Uh, it's executed for exactly 1 second, and I calculate how many times it evaluated within that 1 second. And then the whole loop is executed 30 times so that I collect 30 values, and I use the best value out of those 30 as the final result. And the logic behind this is uh, if it gets slower, it's because the affected probably by some other processes, by the computer doing something else. So theoretically, if you run the same calculation 1,000 times, uh, then really is the limit of how quickly it can be evaluated is the shortest amount of time, or the largest number of iterations that were processed within that single second that you collect. So that's why here I'm actually collecting out of this result the best value, which is the largest number of iterations. So this is the math test where I'm using different math operations and probably the most used FileMaker functions because many FileMaker solutions deal with finance and you very often need to calculate averages, minimums, maximums, and totals. So those are the calculations that I tried here. And for the text operations, I'm testing typical operations like taking first few characters of a string, right, last few characters from a string, or something from the middle, doing case conversions, building a list of values, and running substitution. So those are the reference calculations that I'm using to test how much the calculation engine got faster in the new version of FileMaker. And then there are some other ones which are currently um, trendy. It's working with JSON, and I have two ways. One with local script variable, one is global variable. So you can also see whether there is difference between using local and global variables. And one of them is building a JSON, and the other one is accessing and pre-built JSON. Typically, when you deal with JSON data, you will probably build it once and then access it many times to extract data from it, for instance, when using virtual list. So it's quite important to see how working with JSON works. And then there are two specific calculation speed bugs that were reported in the Claris community. When you check the description here, there's even a link to the Claris community post where the bug is reported. And here I just did the same calculation two ways, where the expert results are that they should be equally fast or almost equally fast. So when you check, the only difference here is I run a position and the first argument is a number, and here the first argument is a string containing the same one as a character. So there's the only difference is that in order to run the position in the first case, FileMaker is supposed to convert it to string. And just by having to convert it to string, you see how big differences in performance. So that should not be happening. If this calculation evaluates over 300,000 times per second, why is this one only able to evaluate 7 times? So that's one bug that's being tested here. The other one is when we use filter values and reference a field, a database field directly, it's slower than loading that database field into a variable and then using that variable as an argument for filter values. So that's another example where intuitively you would expect this approach to be slightly slower because you have two operations, while here you have just one operation using the same data, but actually this approach is about more than 3 times slower without any obvious reason. So these are the calculations that you get right away by downloading BenchTest 2.1. As I mentioned, one test runs for 30 seconds because it's executed 30 times. So when I click this, it will just run this math test 30 times, 1 second each. And after 30 seconds, it will show me the number of iterations. So it should be 30 seconds about now. Is it? Maybe time is flying flow a bit slower as I speak, but now it's finished. And what I show here is I'm actually comparing the current collected value to whatever I stored. So when I collect all the tests, I can just click this button to store the current values and then open BenchTest on a different configuration, a version of FileMaker, run the tests again, and it will show me the difference between the stored ones and the current collected ones.
That's nifty.
And the run all obviously runs all these tests. So I have the five, about 10, 11, no, 10, I guess. Yeah. So it would take 5 minutes approximately. So I'm not going to do that now, but I have a picture here. If you test two different versions, how you can look at and how you can evaluate the results. So here I have a picture, and for instance, if we get the calculation engine significantly faster, then what you can see is that it will show a green bar here and show you that the calculation evaluated several times faster than the stored one. If you calculate if you run it on a version of FileMaker or environment which is slower, it will show you that it's times slower. So it's just calculating, comparing those two values. And if it's significantly slower, likewise, it will show you a red bar to the left from the middle. I can quickly simulate such result here just by allowing myself to modify the value directly. So let me fake the result here. And so, for instance, if I change this value, sorry, I want it more. So let's say this way. Now you see that it's showing the red bar. If I make it significantly slower on the stored version, it will show a wider bar, meaning that it's significantly slower. So that's how the comparison chart works. Basically, if you don't see any bar, it means that the difference between those two versions that you tested is negligible. You see a bar and it's a good one that you're going to be happy with the second version that you tested. You don't want to see the red bars with a new version of FileMaker. So I guess this is something that we are all hoping for in the future.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And this is definitely something that we are hoping not to see.
Yes. That would be unfortunate. Uh, we have a couple questions, Hans, if you're good to take some.
Okay, definitely. Go ahead.
What was Hans's recommendation again? 200 MB of RAM on a server for each FM Pro user?
Yeah, well, it always depends on the size of the solution, but typically at least 150 megabytes for FileMaker Pro user, and it's safe to allocate 1 byte for each concurrent WebDirect user because WebDirect is more memory hungry. But it still depends on the actual, your mileage can vary depending on your situation. So if you run a very simple database, you won't use so much memory, but if you run a huge, even more nation is not going to be enough. So it really depends. It's good to not to guess, but and examine the FileMaker logs. In the File admin console, you can enable statistics. So I can show you on my own server that I'm on my computer, and if you go to logs here, log settings. Here you can enable server statistics, and there's a log called uh, stats.log. And there is a very good article, even though it's maybe 10 years old or even more, I believe on Solent, the website. It explains and surprisingly written by Wim Descartes how to analyze the stats log and decide based on the values you see there which parameters to adjust. So one of the things that the log shows is network performance. It shows the disk reads, disk writes. This cache hit is quite important value to watch for. If the cache hit is all 100%, that means your cache is large enough. You typically want it to be rarely under 100, which means it's not too because if the cache is too big, what can happen is that you will see something else than zero in cache unsaved, which is a danger because if you have a lot of unsaved data in the cache and the server crashes the data. The other thing shows is a number of pro clients connected, number of op databases. I don't think it shows memory consumption, so that's something you have to watch using the system level tools. It depends on platform you use, whether Mac, Windows, or Linux. But it's definitely something good to watch. Sometimes plugins or even FileMaker itself can introduce some memory leaks. So if you see the memory consumption gradually growing, then you may want to either restart the server from time to time. There is also one thing that's very known to eat memory, and that's Java, which is used by WebDirect and the custom web publishing engine. So there is even a tool for this. I think it's in configuration where you can either manually, wait a minute, where is it? Normally I know where it is, but now I'm.
It's the symptom of being live. You suddenly forget where things
Yeah.
are sitting.
There is a button to run the garbage collection. I think it's under web publishing engine here somewhere. So web
Mm-hmm.
somewhere here it should be anywhere. It's also available as a predefined script schedule. So when you create a new schedule and do it system script, one of the predefined system scripts here is run garbage collection. So this is definitely something that you do want to run on a regular basis. And the other thing which is useful to run regularly is parched MDBs, which gets rid of some orphan cache or temporary files which FileMaker server creates with a web session opens and it closes unexpectedly without properly disconnecting. So I hope that answers the question.
Yes. We've got two more. Has data API versus context. Sorry. Bleh. Yeah. It's the only language I speak. I could say it. Has data API versus context had a performance comparison?
Data API versus context. I'm not sure what
Do you want to
uh,
rephrase that, David
means.
Angel, for me? I'll give you the other question, which is, HOnza, do you have any idea what is faster to parse into records? Formatted JSON versus non-formatted JSON. Wondering if all the extra spaces in formatted JSON makes a difference.
Okay, I didn't specifically try that. You can always download BenchTest and modify the JSON tests that are already there to see the difference. But whenever I dealt with JSON, I simply naturally only used formatted version when digging because just by simple logic, if more characters there's more to process for the computer.
And to add to Hansa's point, I've seen a significant improvement in performance when I use MBS plugin, JSON functions through MBS plugin versus native FileMaker JSON functions. Especially, I mean, in some cases it's like, a couple of seconds, and other cases it's just milliseconds. But I agree with you, Hunter. Like every millisecond, adds up to seconds. So, in one of my mission critical processes, I used MBS JSON function. I replaced the FileMaker one to use MBS. Shout out to Christian for that, and it's really good. It improved the performance by more than 10 seconds. So.
That's a great point. One of the case studies that I presented at the conferences, I think last year and last 2 years, was the optimization that we did for our customer, which was based on replacing some of FileMaker native functions with a plugin. So for instance, for pairing records in two tables based on date ranges. The customer was using a custom function to calculate the date ranges and then to summarize the values got as a result. And we simply created a very simple plugin with two functions, one that was generating the date range as a list of date values, and the second function to take the results and calculate the total of the return values. And calculating the total is about 100 or 1,000 times faster than doing it in FileMaker. So if you have one specific calculation that's uh, not efficient enough and it's mission critical for your solution, maybe even creating a custom plugin that just does just that one calculation can be a way to improve the performance significantly. Yeah, I see David rephrase the question. I'm still not 100% sure, but I believe what he means is whether it's faster to do execute FileMaker Data API, which is a script step. I think it was introduced in FileMaker 18. I'll just
That sounds correct.
yes, this execute FileMaker Data API, and how is that compared to the what we could say native way to collect data from a relationship, like using the list function or summaries. The truth is, there is no single right answer because uh, what the execute data API does is that it translates the request to an like an internal language, which I believe Claris calls a FQL, FileMaker query language. And depending on how you approach that query with the data API, you may end up having a either easier or more complicated query to execute compared to what you would do normally. So it's more dependent on how the query is executed internally in steps rather than whether it's data API or not.
I actually got good performance when I replaced the list function with the execute FM data API. It reduced the find time by, like I said, like 50%. So I actually replaced all the native finds, so FileMaker finds with the execute data API, and it was actually faster.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, that was my experience.
Yeah, well, there are different factors. Data API, the point of data API is it does not, and also data API still depends on specific layout as a starting point. As opposed to OData, for instance, which is completely layout independent. In data API, by putting fields on that layout, you minimize the amount of data being transferred. And one of the so if you have a table that has just two fields, and you collect the data from the second field based on the first field through a relationship, you are probably hardly ever notice difference between data API and and the list function. But if you have a structure where your table has 100 fields, uh, just to access those 100 fields, FileMaker has to access all those 100 records and pull them into memory completely. All the fields from that record gets pulled to it. If you, I believe, if you execute data API, this all happens on a server, and what is only sent to the client are those fields that you need. Uh, if you do the list function, I believe what FileMaker server sends to the client are all the relevant records, and then the list actually is evaluated on the client from the cache. So once you have all the data in the cache on the client, it's probably going to be fast even through the list function. I don't take my word for it, but I believe this is what's happening when you use list function on a client from a server. So that's where the data API may save you a lot of time because it doesn't have to pull all those fields, all those extra fields to the client.
Yeah, I agree. My solution had a lot of, it was a wider table, so I could see significant improvement by using the execute data API versus, native FileMaker find. So it depends on the database design.
That's really interesting, though. Follow-up from Lynn, is parsing JSON in a variable faster than JSON in a global?
Well, good thing good way to show what I was actually executing here. So this is exactly what I tested with these functions. So accessing JSON, in this function, I have a predefined JSON array, and I am accessing random items in the array in a loop. And the only difference between the two calculations is this one puts that into a local script variable, and the second one puts it in a global variable. Sorry, wait a minute. Elements. Yeah, here's the array in the global variable. So you see the two dollar signs, while in the first version of this function, we have just a local script variable to hold the JSON. And you can see the numbers here are, let me just try fresh to see what we get what we get as a result. So it will take just 1 minute to run those two tests, and you will see the answer. Right, fresh.
I do love that you can just say, let's run the test right now and see what happens.
And by the way, all the answers to all these questions always depend on the current version of FileMaker you're running and the platform. So even though I give you an answer to the question while running this test in FileMaker Pro 21.1.1, if you try it with a different version, you can get different result.
Has everything in 21.1 been a performance improvement? Question mark.
Sorry, between which two versions?
From 21.1 compared to like 20.3.
Well, only negligible, almost no difference.
Got it.
At least in terms of the calculation. So you see, 21,790 times with local variable and 21,791 times with the global variable. So no difference between those two. And yeah, Lynn mentions variable versus field. Well, I don't know, but you can download BenchTest and try it on your own. For these tests, I simply have I think three fields that you can use. It's referred by calculations data 1, data 2, and data 3. Or sorry, just two. So I have these two fields here. So feel free to put a value in the JSON in a field and just run the same calculation. I can just try it here. If I take this, put it in a new function calculation. I just don't have the field global, so it's a regular field, not a global one. But instead of putting this into an array, I will just delete this part and put the rest of the calculation there. Now I want that array in the field. Let me just calculate it. So I get the JSON in the clipboard. I put it in the field here, the calculations data 1, and instead of using the array, I'll use calculations data 1. And now I can run this test and see how many times per second it evaluates when referencing that field.
There you go. As it goes and putters off. Yeah, no, people saying thank you for showing us.
So it's 4,678. So it seems like it's almost 5 times faster from a variable than from a field.
Interesting. That's pretty substantial.
So it's a good case to use variables, especially when you have to access that value multiple times in a loop.
Yeah, the same goes for functions like, get current date. Just put it in a variable at the top of the script and just use the variable instead of calling the same function multiple times within the same script. It has improvements, yeah.
It's good to mention in many cases it's just like simple logic, like common sense, but don't always rely on common sense because there may be bugs in the code. Just like in this case, common sense would say these two calculations will be equally fast, and they are not.
No, that's awesome. I thank you for the information. Also, thank you for the personal insights, Angelina. That's been awesome too. David, faster to calculate in a variable before you set it to a field.
I would say, David, download a BenchTest and try it out, and
Yes,
let us
people are
know
gonna
what
people are
you
gonna keep
think.
having you make new little test things to
Yeah.
see, and you can
And by
do
the way,
it.
and by the way, if you want to test some other calculations, I will be glad if you let me know the other calculations that you test so that I can include them in the next version and share them with other people as well.
Yes, absolutely. If you do you have anything else, HOnza? Because I think we're good on the questions for the moment. So,
I guess that's it for today.
I mean, you just casually walk by, blow our minds, and walk out as per usual. Seriously, this is a really awesome tool. This being available to the FileMaker community is really awesome. Learned all sorts of little interesting divots today. Thank you everyone for coming. It's good to see you all. And HOnza, I look forward to seeing you again next Thursday. And Angelina, thank you for popping on.
Thank
you.
you. It was a pleasure.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.